Welcome to the Trend Detection Podcast, powered by Siemens. And now your host, Niall Sullivan.
Hello and welcome to this very special episode of the Trend Detection Podcast. It's part of a three-part series we're doing to really dive into the topic of LLM and Gen AI and what that means for Senseye Predictive Maintenance. We've got some really exciting functionality coming out. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined by my colleague, Dan Reid.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. First time on the podcast as well. So.
Yes, first time, my debut.
Exactly, been trying for ages. So no, really great to have you on, Dan. But I guess first of all, to the audience, as you're new, it'd be great for you to introduce yourself and what your role is within Siemens.
Yep, so my name's Dan Reid. I'm Head of Engineering and Product for Senseye Predictive Maintenance and one of the co-founders of Senseye. My background is in machine learning, so I did a PhD related to biometrics. And then after I left university, I went into software development, where I was working on sort of condition monitoring for trains, amongst other things. And that's where I met my other co-founders. And I think it was about 9 years ago we decided to start Senseye. In the early days, I was actually writing code and building the software and doing the architecture. And as the team has grown, I've moved more into sort of a management position. So I manage the product team, so that sort of decides what we're going to build. And I also manage the software engineers, so we decide how that's built, essentially.
No, excellent. And could you imagine where, I guess with the product itself actually, more than anything, where the product was then to where it is today? Could you imagine it could
No, well, it's been quite a journey. And obviously with startups, there's such a high failure rate, right? So there was a lot of luck involved in getting to where we are, and obviously a lot of experience from the other co-founders. You know, we've got sort of decades worth of condition monitoring experience we've drawn on, and we got very lucky through the years as well, which helped us along the way. But yeah, it's amazing to see how far we've come in 9 years.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess let's start at that point then. So the idea for Senseye Predictive Maintenance as it is now, Senseye it was at the time. So where did that originate from? And you might take all the credit here.
No, definitely not. No. So I must say a lot of it comes from the other co-founders. So like I was saying, they've been working in condition monitoring for years, mainly in aerospace, you know, with helicopters, but as I mentioned, also on trains as well. And these are very high value assets, and as a result, they can justify very bespoke software and algorithms to help with their maintenance. But, you know, sectors like manufacturing, they don't have these high value assets, and hence they can't have these bespoke applications built for them. So this sort of the idea for Senseye was to take what sectors like aerospace have been doing for so long and generalize it so that it's cheaper and other sectors can benefit from that technique. And really that was what we were doing for 9 years, but it was really brought about by advancements in machine learning, the adoption of cloud computing, which meant that we could scale it as we have. And at the time, there was a load of hype around IoT, which has died down a bit now, but everything was going to be connected to the internet, right? So we were really riding that wave as well, which was, it was very good timing, I think, when we started. Yeah.
And how has that, I guess, that vision for the product changed over time? You mentioned all those different advances in technology and things. Yeah. So it must have shifted your thinking and the business approach and the product approach.
Yes, well, very early on, actually, we had a much broader idea. We were going to be sort of like a predictive analytics for any IoT application. Oh, yeah. So we, that even had us messing around in farms at one point, looking at smart farming. But after a while, you realise you're a startup and you have to focus down. So with the experience the co-founders had, we decided to focus down onto predictive maintenance. And I think once we made that decision, I don't feel like the vision has changed all that much. I think, the vision we had was so complex to achieve in terms of a sort of a general predictive maintenance. It has just taken us that long to build and hone that. But through the years, I think there's been sort of a couple of, learnings we've had. The first is around how you sort of deploy a predictive maintenance product. So firstly, there's technology which Senseye provides, but then there's this massive cultural change which has to happen within an organisation for them to really benefit from the technology and see the value. And from our history, we sort of knew that would be the case, but I'm not sure if we knew quite how much of an issue it would be. So that's something we've definitely learned along the way, and that lent to Senseye Knowledge platform, which really sort of gathers them learnings throughout the years and gives that sort of step-by-step from deploying predictive maintenance to benefiting from it to scaling it, that sort of process. So I think that was a big learning. And the other part was the connectivity part. Like I said, IoT was all the rage at the time, but actually it's not that easy to connect shop floor assets to the cloud. It's very difficult. And we really struggled with that for years. And we've been lucky enough now to obviously join Siemens and benefit from their expertise in this area, and sort of technologies like Siemens Industrial Edge has meant that it's actually easy to get data from a shop floor to the cloud now. So that's great sort of transition through them years. Yeah.
And not that we want, I guess, focus on, I mean, we could talk about the market in general. How have you seen sort of the market evolve over it? And I guess from a product perspective, because I know you do analyse the market very carefully from a product perspective as well. Have you seen that sort of evolve with Senseye as well?
Yeah, well, very much so. So in the early days, it was a very new market. There wasn't many competitors. The actual market wasn't really aware they needed this product as such, right? We were that early, and we were lucky enough to work with very early adopters. They had massive expertise about their assets and reliability engineering, but also they were culturally ready and they had the data. So they were very ahead of the curve. And then through the years, we attracted other early adopters who likewise were sort of ahead of that curve. But I think we're getting to the point now where we get into this sort of early majority of a market where predictive maintenance is a very hot topic. There's lots of competitors. There's lots of marketing going on around it. So it's definitely progressed through these years. It's been quite interesting to watch.
Yeah. You can actually even see it at events. At an event in Birmingham earlier this year, and we're just walking around, I think I was walking to a stage or something, you look around and everyone just says they're doing predictive maintenance. Yes. Like everyone's doing, but was the term even predictive maintenance a term, like when back when you started?
That's a good question. I think it might have been, but it was not well known. It was, in this sort of maintenance strategy, it's one of them steps on that sort of that roadmap. But it definitely wasn't something the sort of a market, industrial sectors sort of were talking about at that point. So yeah, it's really come along in over that time.
And I guess you mentioned automotive example there, and other customers, as obviously the product's grown and the customer base has grown, but customer feedback is very, very important to the journey as well. Do you want to sort of describe how that sort of helped shape the product to what it is today?
So it's so vital when you're building a product. I think if you read any sort of product book, it will talk about having that sort of very close feedback loop between the product team and customers. And it's sort of like the heart of agile software development as well. You want to have that sort of fast iteration. So it's been vital. Like I said, we had Nissan very early on, and we had a lot of feedback from them. And really, we built the application for Nissan in them early days. We tried to generalize it, but that was where a lot of the requirements and feedback was coming from. And then as we added additional customers, we got a wider sort of set of feedback from them. And the way it typically works is that we'll have sort of one-to-one sessions with our customers. We'll talk about what we've developed and get their feedback on it, and we'll talk about the future and where we're heading, and sort of see if they can give us direction as to where we're going. But I would be amiss to not mention that also internally we have a lot of domain knowledge. So I think it sets us apart from many of our competitors in that we're not a software house. We are very much a sort of condition monitoring, predictive maintenance company, and that's in the co-founders, but also the hires we've made since. We've got a lot of domain knowledge, And that means that the product team has that experience on hand to complement the feedback we get from customers. So I think both of them angles meant that we've been able to sort of steer the product over the years in the right direction, and hopefully we'll continue to do so.
Exactly. That's really interesting, because so when I joined the company, I think there was a stat that said something like 25% of people are condition monitoring experts. It was something like that.
Yeah, that's it.
But I guess that's so important, because they're not just like I said, not just talking to software people that know the software, but they're talking to people who could actually talk about their machines and the condition of their machines on a deeper level.
Yeah, that's it. And for the people in the product team and the software engineers, we don't typically come from this background. We come from software backgrounds or machine learning backgrounds. So you really need to ground what we know with the domain experience. So it's that sort of combination of the two which is so vital. So that's been really beneficial for product. Yeah.
And because I guess that's a pretty good blend of people. Is it software, customer, condition monitoring? Yeah. And in terms of back to sort of the customer element, is there actually an example you can think of where a customer's mentioned, suggested something or spotted something they could see an opportunity to enhance the product, and that sort of come to fruition? Yeah,
well, I think you could point at many things within the application, but recent examples are things like the configuration groups. So they allow you to scale the configuration of assets. So when you've got thousands of assets, they all need to be configured in certain ways. So these groups allow you to scale that configuration, and that was driven by customer demand. That sort of push to quickly scale out the deployment of Senseye across sites and assets. We've also introduced derived measures, which is our sort of pre-processing capability. And in the past, a lot of customers used to do that on the edge, but it's quite a difficult thing to do. So there was a lot of demand to push that into Senseye, which we've now built into the product. And there's one, we're actually working on adding vibration analysis at the moment to the application. And again, that was a sort of similar story whereby in the past, a lot of our customers have done that with software on the edge. And then, they get the raw waveform, they do the Fourier transform, get the frequencies and the condition indicators, and then they push that to Senseye. But what they're looking for is actually just to have all of that functionality in Senseye. So it's a one-stop shop for the condition monitoring. So that's what we're sort of currently building, trying to take that functionality and get it into the application. So a lot of the features we build are driven by customer feedback. Yeah,
and actually, I guess because you mentioned like one-stop shop, because obviously we know that lots of things can integrate with Senseye and it can push data elsewhere. I mean, being part of that Siemens family as well, because I guess there's a broader range of products that we can offer a full solution to customers, I guess, as well.
Yeah, that's it. And before Siemens, we very much did the Senseye application, and we relied on the customers or partners to do the connectivity and the integration into the maintenance systems. And now with Siemens, like you say, we've got a whole portfolio of products which complement Senseye, so they work around Senseye. So like Industrial Energy I mentioned earlier, which is all about connectivity from the shop floor to the cloud, but there's also Brownfield Connect, which is similar. They have Insights Hub, which is sort of like a cloud-based historian, but also a platform for different applications to work together. And also even things like low-code applications like Mendix, which is great for sort of connecting, being the sort of a glue between systems. So we commonly connect with maintenance systems. So sort of Mendix can be brought in there to facilitate that. Loads of great things we're pulling on.
Yeah, and of course, I guess maybe going back to the start again, was the idea always for Senseye, as it was at the time, to be agnostic in terms of assets, but also in terms of systems and things like that? Because I always see that as like a big sort of differentiator. Because obviously, being part of Siemens, we can fill in gaps, but we can also integrate with existing customer infrastructures, let's say.
Yeah, very much so. So we, like I mentioned, we were trying to build something which was general. So the aim was that it would work on any type of machine, any vertical, any manufacturer. So that was the sort of a real push. And that was really possible because we had, the advances in AI, but also cloud computing meant that we could scale that up. But some of the other sort of things we were pushing towards, we were looking to make it very easy to use, so customers didn't have to have data science sort of type experience. So there was no, our plan was that you shouldn't have to select algorithms and train them and tune the parameters. It's very much just send the data and it works, because we're very aware, obviously, that we wanted to be working with maintainers and reliability engineers, and they obviously have a deep knowledge about their assets and reliability engineering, but not so much about data science or machine learning. So we wanted to make that easy for them. So that was another push. We're also focusing on scale. So in the past, condition monitoring mainly focused on the high criticality assets. So you'd have like a handheld vibration device and focus on them. But with AI and cloud computing, there's thousands of assets in a factory. If they fail, they all have consequences, if they fail. So we wanted to monitor all of the assets within a factory, but not just one factory, right? It's all of the factories across a company, an organization. And then finally, we see ourselves very much as a decision support system. So we're very aware of the skills our users have. They really have, really strong knowledge. And really, we would just want to harness that and make, spread their knowledge further. So rather than them looking after tens of assets, we want to take that knowledge and allow them to look after hundreds or thousands. So we very much see ourselves as a system to support decision making rather than replacing people. It's just not what we set out to do, and we sort of want to exploit that local knowledge that they have about the machines to help them.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the knowledge sharing part, because it is, I guess it gets to a stage where you can, if you've got, say, all plants in the world in one platform, you can compare asset A over here to asset B over here, and maybe and have a conversation about it as well. Because it's one thing you're saying about bringing it all together and not communicating in different systems. It's working within that one platform.
Yeah, that's it. And it's even like connecting different sites. So because we're cloud based, we can cover all of the factories of an organization, and it means that you're bringing together people and knowledge and machines, but typically, they're siloed away, even across sites as well as systems, as you mentioned. And as we speak to customers, there's this real concern around knowledge, because they have an aging workforce and they're losing skills and knowledge through retirement. And then within the workforce and the market, there just isn't that many skills available for sort of reliability engineering. So there's this concern about losing knowledge. And Senseye, we're in quite a privileged position because we do monitor, thousands of machines across loads of sites. We have a lot of the time series data from the measurements taken from the machines, but we also have a lot of text. So we pull in maintenance tickets from the maintenance systems. We have feedback on all the cases, which are essentially our notifications. So we have feedback on them. And we're also bringing in more conversation into the application so that users can discuss a particular case. And there's just a wealth of information within that text. So I think it's really exciting from that point. And the language models which have recently come around has made it sort of very easy to make use of that text, whereas in the past it's been incredibly difficult.
No, absolutely. I think before we go into, we'll dive into that topic in a lot more detail. But just as another take a step back, because obviously James and the research team are very much part of the product story as well. So I just wanted to give them some, obviously, well, not just a shout, but explain their role, how they've helped you and your sort of vision for the product as well, or deliver the vision for the product. So
Senseye is very much an AI product, and it has been, since the start. And research team is just vital to that. So the research team are responsible for understanding what we want to deliver to customers for customer pain, and then they explore ways in which we can solve that. And as I've mentioned, we were trying to build a general system, but even building a bespoke predictive maintenance system is incredibly hard. Building a general one is like another step on, right? So the research team is, they've got some great skills there, and their job is to solve these hard automation problems, taking this data, getting insight and value out the back of it in an automated, general way, and it's far from easy. Yeah, very difficult.
And how do the two teams sort of work together? Let's say the product and what's that sort of relationship like? Not to go into the detail. I'm just interested. I mean, I guess people would be interested how do those two teams sort of work together?
Yeah, so we mainly operate obviously we're heading towards the same endpoint, right? So there's a sort of a product vision we're heading towards, but we operate on different timescales essentially. So research are forward-looking, so they might be building stuff which doesn't see the application for 6 months, a year, something like that. Whereas a product team, we're very much focused on what we're building now, what we're building next, and loosely, forward from there. So that's the sort of the way it works. The nice thing with the research team is they have a bit of bandwidth to explore things, right? So they can explore new technologies and new ways of doing things, and that's really important. So they can consider different ways of doing things, because we are in a new field still, and there's always better ways to be approaching problems. So they have that sort of capability to look around. Whereas product, we're very much we're always sort of building stuff. We don't really have that flexibility to explore much. So I think that's a really beneficial aspect to it. But yeah, you can imagine Senseye without a research team, essentially.
No, exactly. That's good. That's good. No, absolutely. And I guess that does lead on. I know you were sort of covering some of those themes before, but about the Gen AI topic, because obviously research, again, very much a key part of that as well. So from your point of view, when did that start becoming part of your thinking in terms of the roadmap for the product and where we're going? Yeah,
so obviously when ChatGPT came out, there was a lot of news and excitement, and as I was mentioning, research have got that sort of a bit of bandwidth to explore these new technologies. So I think very early on they started exploring how it could be used. And it's probably worth noting that, at Senseye, we're very much focused on delivering outcomes and delivering value. We're not interested in, technology for technology's sake. It's just, it's not of interest to us. So typically how this works is that we consider how that technology can be used to deliver the value we want to give to customers. So that might either be replacing, the existing approaches we use and maybe improving them, or exploring, problems we know customers have, but we haven't really been able to solve in the past. So sort of new areas for the product. So I think, research, since it was announced, was sort of exploring how it could be used, and building prototypes, trying to demonstrate the value it could deliver in various aspects of a product. And there are sort of many areas it could be used. And then once we sort of have that understanding of, we've got validation that, it does deliver customer value, it's worth building, then it transitions from the sort of a research team into the product team, and we build it into the application.
Yeah, so if we think back to like ChatGPT, like how long's that journey been? I can't think of the time frame in my own head, to be honest.
No, well, it's gone so quickly, hasn't it?
It feels like it.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a year and a half, but it's it just had such an announcement, right, an uptake and excitement around it, and I don't think it's been all that long, but we've even since it was announced, there's been such developments. I think the community and the lots of companies have really taken it on board and pushed it forward much quicker than I think I've seen any other technology really. It's quite impressive journey for it.
And obviously in terms of the predictive maintenance sort of market we're in, we're seeing that coming through already, from other competitors as well.
Yeah, initial signs.
Yeah, it's good.
So it's certainly coming through, and I think if you look at any market, you're starting to see it come through.
Yes.
I think it's interesting seeing how people are making use of it, because there are definitely some companies who are looking for that sort of box ticking exercise, as it were, right? We've got ChatGPT or LLMs in the product, and you sort of question how much value it's delivering, and then you're seeing other companies who are really, making the best of them, right, and really delivering value, and it really plays into the product. So it's interesting seeing how people are making use of it and where it fits nicely in the market.
And then I guess with the spotlight back on us naturally, but how are we utilising that? Because we talked about the scalability of the product, and all of its integrates with any asset, any system. But how, and actually more important of that, the other part we're talking about the conversation, keeping knowledge, or it's more about surfacing knowledge. But I feel like I'm putting maybe words in your mouth there. I'll let you take. I'm sort of trying to set the scene, but maybe I'm going too far. But how will we utilise it as part of our sort of scalable technology?
Yeah, so there could be. There's loads of places we could apply it, but I think there's two really interesting aspects to LLMs which help Senseye. The first is it can make sense of text, right? Which I alluded to earlier, but it's something we've struggled with in the past. Traditional machine learning and statistical techniques, they're all about numbers, and we've used it for time series data, right? But in addition to that, we have all of that wealth of textual information and knowledge we have in the system, which customers are interested to make use of. And language models in particular, now it's easy to make use of that. It's easy to understand what's being said and draw insight from that text we have in the system. So I think that sort of textual understanding is really, really important. The other part is this sort of co-pilot concept which has come around with language models. So having some sort of agent that in an application that you can talk to using sort of natural language. And have a conversation, an ad hoc conversation. You can talk about anything, within that system. And really, right from the start, we were trying to be a decision support system. And I think this is, very much along them lines, whereby you almost have an assistant in the application where you can ask ad hoc questions and explore the data. So I think that's a powerful concept for Senseye. So it's them sort of two concepts that I quite like in relation to LLMs and Senseye.
So I guess because like you said on the journey, because we're already capturing the user feedback as well, in cases of closed things. So it's almost like surfacing some of those insights, which I guess aren't necessarily maybe available, easily, let's say. But but you think of powerful tool, if you can ask a question, it can search through those and then bring that to the surface, what they're looking for. I guess that's the power of the
that's
tool.
it. Yeah, because we were collecting feedback on cases to tune the algorithms already, but also it's just beneficial for our users. So we had that feedback that people could look back at. And then we were collecting the maintenance information, which helped our algorithm. So it sort of told us when data was expected to change or when we've had a success of some sort. Also just for our customers to look through the history of an asset, because like you said a minute ago, we do bring together a lot of data into one place. So it's almost, that sort of nice view onto your assets and potentially across many sites. It's really just the LLMs allow us to do that, to summarize that information, and it means that our users don't have to manually go through and look at everything. The LLMs can do that and summarize it and give you the sort of highlights, as it were.
Was it an easy decision to sort of focus on those two particular use cases? So I guess the nature of it, there's a lot of like excitement around it, and there's lots you can do. The temptation might have been to try and do lots and lots of different things, but was that an easy decision in the end, just to focus on the two?
Yeah, well, like you say, there's lots of areas that we could move into, and in product, I think the hardest decisions are always about prioritization, what you do first and what you do later, because you always have limits. So what we try, we went through the potential avenues we could take it, compared that to what our customers are telling us, like what they want us to be doing, what their pain points are, and really you prioritize it based on that. So I think, we focus very much on that knowledge capture initially, because I think that's what language models do best, right? They take a lot of knowledge and boil it down. So we're really playing into the strengths of LLMs there. And then that sort of co-pilot probably will be following that change. Yeah.
And I guess another question, when we talk about ChatGPT, the other side of it, of course, is security, privacy, all those questions, which I guess naturally will come up, and customers will actually imagine. So how have you sort of thought about that in the process of integrating that sort of functionality in the application?
Yeah, so there is a lot of concern and I think it's justified. And I think the concern is that, you provide knowledge to these language models, and that, gets learnt by the model. And either it's exposed to other customers inadvertently, or that it gets sort of sucked into the hyperscalers, right, and OpenAI, and it gets built into future models and then maybe exposed publicly, which would be a disaster. And that's very much a case of you using public ChatGPT. You are handing over your data. But there are different ways to deploy language models. So in the case of Senseye, we're running our own private language model, which is in our cloud. And it means that we can configure it, and we've actually sort of turned off any learning that happens through that. So any sort of information we provide the language model, it provides us our results we're looking for. It does the processing we want, but then it forgets the data which was provided. So there's no concern of it getting leaked to other customers, say, or going back to the cloud providers or OpenAI. Is very much a sort of a local LLM that we make use of. There's different approaches and different flavors, I suppose, of these ChatGPT. And in the case of Senseye, there's not that much concern about privacy going on.
And is it sort of a customizable thing? Is it something you can turn if an organisation wanted to turn certain things on and turn other things off to do with that, could they do that?
There are lots of customization in these language models. The bit what we'll probably offer is the ability to turn them off completely. So there's some geographies that can't use them, other organisations which might not want to use them, which is fine. But I think the really exciting aspect is the sort of capture of knowledge from our customers. So within the sort of a history of an asset or the assets we've got in Senseye, we have all of this sort of knowledge which comes about through the sort of a natural maintenance process, so tickets being raised or feedback on the cases, which obviously will feed into these language models. But we're also exploring how to seed the system with knowledge that you have within your organisation. So being able to get everything out of your maintainer's heads into the system and then let the language model make use of that. It's incredibly powerful. So I think that will be the main aspect of tuning. It would be providing as much knowledge as you can up front so that you explain, the common failure modes of your assets or where you have the most problems or how you solve problems which arise. If we can get that documented within the system, the language models can then make use of that information when we're serving up more prescriptive sort of messaging and insights as we raise cases.
Yeah. I guess, again, it's something to talk about, the importance of data again comes to the fore. It's always been, I guess, for Senseye Predictive Maintenance, it's always been important. Good data means, better outcomes.
Yeah.
But it's the same, with this evolution of the product as well.
Yeah, very much so. And it's always good data and you get good results. And we've seen that through, the derived measures, like I was mentioning, you have that pre-processing the time series data. But, it's similar in terms of the texture information. If we can get that knowledge in a form that is, well-defined and, in a sort of a good definition of that knowledge into the system, it can make use of it far better. But the language models are very impressive in terms of how little information they need. I think that's something which has surprised me. So maintenance records are notoriously low quality. So you often get like a sentence or two and, not much description because everyone's busy, right? They haven't got time to write these things. And, it's the same everywhere. But through our experimentations and through the prescriptive maintenance, features we're building now, it's really impressive to see how they can take just a sentence or two and really, infer a lot of information from that. And I think that comes from, these language models being trained on the internet, right? They have this sort of world knowledge that they can bring into, take a sentence or two and really understand what that's try to convey, I suppose. So it's been quite impressive, and I don't think, the prescriptive stuff we're building, I don't think, the organisations will have to change their maintenance processes. They won't have to start writing novels for every ticket or anything, right? They can keep it, short and sweet, and a sentence or two, and hopefully we'll be able to start surfacing that knowledge in future cases. So I've been quite impressed with how that's worked.
Okay, that is an important thing to mention, because some people might be sitting here going, "Oh yeah, we don't really have any, we don't have a lot of data, or we don't have a lot, we don't use a maintenance management system, so we can't benefit from it." But that's interesting. You're saying even a small amount of data or information can get you sort of started on it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the same with the time series data. We a lot of customers think that they don't have dedicated sensing, they can't use predictive maintenance, but there's just a wealth of data within organisations, within controllers and systems that they have around that can be made use of. And it's the same with the texture information. I'm sure there's lots of information within most organisations we work with, and even if there isn't, if you could provide that sort of, just a high-level understanding of your machines and the failure modes, and we can start building that into the system. So, I think it's very applicable to the majority of the customers we see.
Oh, excellent. And I guess as we sort of come towards the end, we've sort of covered where we are now with some of that, some of the early first functionality, let's call it, in Gen AIs, but. As we look into the future, maybe because we said it changes so often anyway,
yep.
we could say something now and come back and talk in a year, and it's thrown up in the air again. But is there a vision? Well, I presume we will have that word again, vision, in your minds about where you, as we're here today, where you see the product and this Gen AI sort of topic evolving within the Senseye Predictive Maintenance platform?
Yeah, so we have a rough roadmap, and like you say, it's subject to change.
Caveat.
Caveat.
Asterisk.
But the first step is really on this prescriptive maintenance side of things and knowledge capture. So when we raise a case, we want to provide the evidence like we do currently, but we also want to provide a bit of prescriptive guidance along with that. So that's going to be building on the knowledge we have in the system. So we'll look for cases in the past which have similar patterns to them on the asset in question or other assets. We're going to suck up essentially all of the text which are associated with them cases, and then have the language model summarize that. And what it will provide is a sort of a list of potential root causes and maybe recommended actions that users can take, along with links to them historic cases, so that the maintenance staff can actually look at them historic cases and sort of justify what the system's telling them. So that's going to be the sort of the first step. The next step will be looking at Copilot functionality. So we definitely want to keep providing all of the information up front, right? So it's not going to be the case that you're going to have to talk to a Copilot all of the time. It's definitely not. Cases will still provide the evidence and the prescriptive stuff. But where I think the Copilot comes in really nicely is when you've got more ad hoc queries that you might have. So when you're looking at a case and you want to understand, actually give me a summary of all of the maintenance which has happened on this asset over the year, say. That's a lot of clicking to do in the application, but the LLM can just gather that information and summarize it for you. So it's more for them ad hoc queries where, the standard information we present, you want something a little bit more. So Copilot will be following. And then sort of longer term, there's, research going on at the moment which is looking at the underlying technologies of language models and seeing if we could apply it to time series data. So language models have been trained on text and language, and they're really good at understanding that and predicting it. We're exploring whether we can take the same fundamental technologies and approaches but apply it to time series data. And initial results show that it's very promising, and it might be the case that we could actually enhance our anomaly detection or forecasting with these sort of underlying technologies.
And I guess because we've talked about it so much about especially earlier on, about customer feedback as well. I mean, has there been early conversations with customers? Obviously, the functionality, with the functionality, because like I said, it's driven by customer needs. It's not just let's just do it for just 'cause it's cool and it's out there. But presumably, there's a customer driving force behind it as well.
Yeah, that's it. So we've been talking to customers about this prescriptive concept. Sort of as we've been building the prototypes, we've been showing them and getting feedback, and we've also done a few experiments with actually specific customer data and showing them the results. And there's a lot of excitement around that because there's this sort of drive to preserve knowledge. So I think there's a lot of excitement around that. We're just doing the same with Copilot now. So we've got various prototypes, which is sort of demonstrating that Copilot concept. And we're talking to customers to see. What's interesting with Copilot is that it's free text, so you can ask it anything, which is hard as for a product, because you have to constrain it, right? We need to know what is the priority when we're developing this. What do we want to deliver first and support? So we're trying to talk to customers to understand what that might they ask a Copilot, right? And how might they use that? And in essence, like I say, it's for ad hoc queries, so it's hard to answer. But some sort of direction as to what are the common queries, what are they going to explore, how do they think they would use this, and then it just gives us some priority as we develop it.
So. No, exactly. It's almost, and again, that's true. Must be a tricky thing from a product point of view. You're creating something, but then it's almost as they're using it is when the real, obvious use cases almost will come out of it from there. And maybe that's how the product's developed in general, for that sort of philosophy, I guess. But
it is tricky. It's because although a free text input makes it seem like anything is possible. It's rarely not the case, right? And especially with sort of a Copilot within Senseye, the benefit comes from connecting that Copilot to Senseye and the data we have. And obviously that takes time. So although you get the language for free, you don't typically get the connectivity to the systems that are making use of these Copilots. So it's picking a path through the options and making sure we hit the big priorities first.
And so the big final question is, Dan, is what's the timeline for this? No, only joking. Yeah. But no, I wouldn't do that to you. No, I think that's a really good way to draw the discussion to a close, I guess. I think we've covered almost everything. I mean, is there any sort of final thoughts on just the general, your excitement around it, and your feeling around it, how it's going to change the market? I guess maybe we could finish there.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think it's going to change a lot over the years, and I think it's going to be quite a radical shift in how we use applications and computers in general, and that's just starting off, right? You can start seeing the elements from that in lots of applications, and Senseye as well going forward. But I think it will be a step change, and we just need to have a careful approach to how we implement it and ensure that what we deliver to customers is of value. It's obviously safe and secure, but also it's is giving advice which is useful rather than detrimental. So we spent a lot of time prototyping that, and we've got a fairly good grasp on that. But it's it's an exciting future, but I suppose my take is always a bit cautious, right? I want to make sure that it works as it should, and we deliver value. So lots to seek in the future, I think.
Just got to deliver value. That's the key.
Delivering value. That's what we're all about.
Good one to sign off on. But it's been really great to chat with you, Dan. Yeah. The first of many podcast appearances. I'd like to say. We'll see if we invite you back. But no, thank you for your time and sharing your sort of background and expertise with us. It's been really great.
No, thank you for having me.
And Jess, thank you everyone for joining us. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Please like and subscribe on all major podcast channels, and find out more about Senseye Predictive Maintenance at Siemens.com.